Okay, this video is going to take you through an introduction to using loops in Java, and this is going to be an excellent addition to what we already know. It'll allow us to do more things in Java as we write our programs. And so what you'll need before you start watching the rest of the video is you need to open up the investment pseudocode document from day 4 of this week's module, copy and paste it into a Google Doc or something else that you want to add so you can add to it. And then also open up computer interest calculator or compound interest calculator.java and save that to chapter 4 in JGrasp there, and then you'll be ready to go because I will have you type some stuff in JGrasp as well. So make sure you do that before you continue on with this video. And so what we're going to do first is you should have this already copied into another document so that you can add some things to it. Now what we're going to do is we are going to take a problem, an investment problem, and show how we can use a loop to help it solve a particular problem or meet a certain objective. So let's say that we want to invest $1,000. So when you invest money or put money into an investment account, what happens is the money actually will grow, will get more in that account without you doing anything. And the reason is because of a percentage rate or interest. And so the interest is multiplied by the balance or the amount you have in the investment account, and it gives you an interest, and that amount of interest is actually added on. So you start out the year with this much. At the end of the year there's a certain amount of interest, then that's added, so now you have this much in your account. Then the next year you're going to add some more, and so it just keeps on getting more and more, and you actually add more each year, add more than you did the year before, and so your amount grows. We use what's called an APR or annual percentage rate, and we're going to use the term compounded annually. Just all that means is that the interest is calculated once a year. It's annually. You can also have a compounded monthly, so each month a certain amount of interest is added to your account. You could have compounded daily. So this is compounded annually, and so the interest rate will be simple. At the end of each year, the interest will be calculated based on the balance in the investment account, which I just said, and that interest added to the balance, which I said all this. Now our problem that we want to solve here, or the objective we have for this particular program, is to find out in what year will our $1,000 become $2,000. And of course the current year is 2019. Now one hint as far as our suggestion, when you're trying to write a program, if you're not totally sure what to do, then the suggestion would be to start solving the problem manually, which is what we're going to do. And it's kind of like putting together the algorithm that we talked about, the sequence of steps. And you do them first, and if you can do those particular steps yourself with a calculator, pencil, paper, etc., then you can then transfer that to code and tell the computer what to do and let the computer do it for you. And so that's what we're going to do here. So let's start on this. So let's say that we have started the year. So what happens here is we've put the money into the account, and at the end of the first year we're going to take that $1,000 and we're going to multiply it by 0.05, and because remember the interest times the money was going to, or the interest rate times the balance or the amount of money is going to give you the interest. And so our first line is going to look like this. So you should type this down. So you have $1,000, which is what we invested, multiply it by the interest rate, which is the annual interest rate, and that's going to equal $50. So the $50 stands for the amount of interest that's to be added to the account. And so we go down, and on the next line, go ahead and write 1,000 plus 50. So our current balance is 1,000. We add the 50 to it. Now our new balance is going to be 1,050. And so the next thing that we do is we see that the balance in 2020, so we started in 2019, the balance in 2020 is now 1,050. So that's what we see. Now, if we're doing this manually, let's say we're going to do this just like we're doing right now until we figure out what year our balance becomes 2,000. Then what you've got to think is, okay, what do I have to think in order to, what has to be true in order for me to do this all over again? Well, what has to be true is your balance has to have not reached 2,000 yet. It's got to be less than 2,000. So what we can say here is check to see if the balance is still less than 2,000. And so if that's true, then we're going to go through these steps again until finally we're going to see that it's no longer less than 2,000, and therefore we would stop figuring this out because our problem would be solved. And so then we would go ahead and start all over again. So now the new balance is 1,050. So we're not going to take it by 1,000 again. We're going to go by 1,050. And you notice that we're going to add $52.50 of interest instead of 50. So then the next year we'll be even adding more than $52. And it'll continue to increase. So that's how money grows in an investment account. And so then we would then do the balance here plus the interest and get our new balance. Now we have $1,102.50. We would then, the balance now in 2021 is $1,102.50. And then we check again to see, well, is the balance still less than 2,000? And of course it is. So we do this again. Now, so the reason I'm having you start this out, because we're not going to do this anymore after this now, is that to see, can you imagine doing this and repeating yourself? And even when you start writing the code, you would have to have this long program because you would have to have these calculations for each year. It's going to end up being around 14 or 15 years. And so in other words, you would have to go through this process 15 times. And so that could take a while. Now what we want to do then is we want to go back and we want to take a look at, begin to kind of develop some pseudocode here and get some memory locations, some variable names going on. And so the 1,000 stands, we're going to say, is the balance. So we're going to call that memory location balance. And let's see, I got to check this out. And so the balance we're going to say starts at is starting at 1,000. So that's where its starting value is going to be that. And then we have 0.05, which is actually the decimal representation of the annual percentage rate. And so we're going to name this variable APR, and go ahead and do it all caps. And I'll tell you why in a bit. But and so the APR is going to be 0.05. And then the 50 represents the interest. So and that actually starts at 0. And so when we go over here to this first calculation that we did by calculator, we're going to start writing pseudocode for it, and we're going to say, or almost Java actually, but we're going to go balance times the APR is equal to the interest. And then now we go down here and we see that we're got the 1,000, of course, is the balance. And by the way, then the interest, which I should have done, is going to actually change and be, oh boy, that wasn't what, I don't know why. Oh, I know I did that. Okay, it's not supposed to do that. And so this becomes 50. All right, so now the interest has 50 in it. Okay, so we're going to go balance plus interest is going to give us the new balance. We could say balance, but which we're going to just keep in one variable, but we'll say it's the new one. It's updated. As we said in chapter 2, an assignment operator will update. It can give a new, or the initial value of a variable, or it can update the value that's already there. And so now we've done this, and now it says the balance in 2020 is 1050. Now we have another memory location here, and that's the year. And so the year is going to be, it starts at a 2019, and so, but now it's 2020. Well, how do we get 2020 now? And so the way we do that, of course, is that we take the year, plus 1 is the new year. Okay, so this is, again, this is going to update the year. So 2019, then it becomes 2020. The next year becomes 2021, etc. All right, and then we're going to check to see, at some point, we're going to check to see, well, is the balance still less than 2,000? Because if it is, then what we're going to do is we're going to stop repeating these steps. All right, so that's kind of the idea. You do it manually first. See, well, what are the amounts or the pieces of data that are going to have variables or memory locations, and then you can begin to write some calculations or code or descriptions, your pseudocode type stuff, because this really is pseudocode. You're not going to have Java that looks like this. It's not going to work. All right, there's one more piece of information in here that is not in a variable yet, and so maybe you can see if you can find that. But it is the goal is the 2000. And so that what the author in the textbook, what he does is he uses things like this and calls it a target. Now we're going to put all caps here as well. And so we have a target amount, which makes it clear as to what you're looking at. And that, of course, is 2,000, and that's not going to change. And so we're going to see is the balance less than the target is really what's going on. All right, so now let's begin to put this with the JGrasp. And so in JGrasp, what you can do is go to that program that I had you open at the beginning, and we're going to begin to deal with this and show you how to relate that then. And so what we want to do, and for now, just so it's easy to see, and you don't always have to do this, but I will say this. No, I'll say this later. So we're going to start with declaring our variables. And I'll tell you that when you begin to use loops, the general rule is you're going to be declaring your variables outside of the loop. And so that's why I like the idea of doing all your calculations at the beginning, because this makes sure that you don't declare something inside of a loop. And that's something that we'll deal with later on when we explain why that happens, why it's important, or why you don't usually want to declare a variable within a loop. And so the first thing that we look at is we've got balance. So balance is going to be a double, and it's 1,000, and so that's the initial value. So there's your one declaration with initialization. You can say 1,000.0 if it make you feel better. But it will store the 1,000 in balance as a double 1,000.0 anyways. The next thing we want to do is we want to have the APR, the interest rate, as a decimal, because you're going to be multiplying by a decimal. And we want it to be a final, or a named constant, if you remember that from chapter 2. And that means the final tells the compiler this does not change throughout the program, which we don't want to change the interest rate throughout the program. The balance is going to change, but the interest rate will not. The next thing is the interest. The interest will also change throughout, and so that's a double, and so we declare that variable. You can give it a value, or you don't have to. Now, if it says that the interest has not been initialized during the compiling situation, then you could always say that, well, it's 0. So that, that's possible. You could do that. The other thing is that we have target. And so our target is not going to change. That would not make sense throughout the program in this case. And so we're going to make this a final, or a named constant as well. And then the next thing is going to be the year. And so the year, we're going to initialize that, of course, to be the current year. And it's an int. And so now we've declared all of our variables. All right, so now we can go on and go, okay, well, let's start writing code. And so this is another thing. Sometimes students will try to figure out where to put their loop structure, their loop code into the program. And for some students, it's hard to see that. So my suggestion is this, is you just start writing your code without the loop stuff, and just write it as, through one time. So we're going to do that. So here we are. We have the balance times the APR is going to be the interest. So what happens is that balance times the APR is going to be the calculation, as it says in here. Okay, so here's your calculation, but you're not going to say equals interest, because that's not equals. That's not an equal sign. This is an assignment operator. And so the variable that's being assigned is on the left side. The variable that's going to get its contents changed or updated, something new stored in it, is on the left all the time. And so we have to remember that. And so that's why this is called pseudocode. It's not true actual code. And so we're going to put whatever the balance times APR, which was 50, is going to be assigned to or stored in the variable interest. All right. So then the next thing that we had here was we took the balance, added the interest to it, and updated the balance variable. And so we go down here, and so we're going to take that balance, and we're going to add the interest to it, and we're going to store that into the balance account so that the balance account is updated. Of course, that's going to keep getting larger. Now, I never did change that over here, which I should have. So this was supposed to be 1050, and I never did change that. All right, so the other thing I didn't change is, I guess these moved. Okay, so there we go. All right, now, so that's the next thing that we did. And now then after that, what we did is we said, okay, well, the year is 2020 now with this new balance. So over here, we're going to add a 1 to the year, which is like what we have over here in our pseudocode. Now, what you need to do in JGrasp here is put a line comment and go, year is incremented, and this is a word that we'll use a lot, so this is not a word to just go, well, I don't care what it means. You've got to care because you're going to hear it a ton of times, and you'll be able to say it as well. Year is incremented by 1. So when you put a plus at the end or after a variable name, then that means the compiler is going to add 1 to the value of that variable. That's all that means. And so it's adding 1, which is a very commonly used piece of code in programming. So this is something that will become very, very useful to you. All right, now then we said is we're going to then check to see if the balance is less than the target, less than the 2,000. All right, now that hopefully you know what this expression is from chapter 3. You've got a Boolean expression. Okay, so they're testing the PA system. They knew I was going to be doing a video, so they said, let's do the testing then. Anyways, so now what we got to do is we go, okay, we check to see is the balance less than the 2,000, which it is. It's up to 1,050, as we said up here. Well, we could, copy and paste this and do it all over again, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to write some code, because otherwise you're going to have to do this another 15 times or 14 more times. And so what happens is what we see is, well, where do we want, let's say that it is true, like it is, well then where are we going to go? What are we going to do next? Well, we're going to go back to doing the interest is equal to the balance times the APR again. So we're going to repeat that. We're not going to go back up and repeat these declarations. And so we're going to go up here and we're going to put type while. And then we're going to go balance is less than target. Hit enter. All right, so that's what you're going to do. Here's our Boolean expression, which we know about. And so we're going to put these braces in. And then you can select these 3 lines and hit the tab key, and it'll move them all in once. All right, so this now should look familiar. So this, as we should know, is a Boolean expression. When the compiler looks at and sees a Boolean expression, it's doing the same thing now as it did before. So it is going to see that that 1,050 is less than 2,000. Now this, of course, is like the if statement, the if at the beginning. So while means what it means in English. As long as the balance is less than the target, we're going to do this. So it's just like the if statement. If this is true, what did we say it did? It jumps in and executes that branch. If this is true, we're going to do this loop again. So we're going to keep doing this loop. Now, at some point, the balance is going to become over, or going to get over 2,000. So it will say false, and then of course you're going to go out here, only there's not an else or anything to go to. All right, and so this is essentially how this works. So this is called the body of the loop, which we'll find out later, talk about more later. It'll just keep repeating this and repeating this until the balance is greater, or 2,000 or greater, and then it actually stops the loop. So